This climate change is changing, and we need also to change. We need to plan ourselves. We plan ourselves in a way that we achieve inside or within this period of climate change. We don't just lose hope and die. I know the future is not bright for many people, but we need to focus ourselves. We need to ensure that we become part of what is happening. We don't leave this to other people to plan. Let's all be together. Today I'll talk about rural communities on climate change, and I will focus on impacts, challenges, setbacks, and local solutions. My name is Charles Eris, a champion for climate change locally informed solutions. You can reach me through my mail below, ekalale@gmail.com. I live in Turkana, Kenya, and you can kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, DFCC News. What is the impact of the climate change to rural communities? We get that rural communities are highly dependable on natural resources that are affected by climate change. And these communities also face challenges in responding to climate change. We have a severe drought experienced in rural communities. Like in Turkana in 2018, we really had very heavy floods. We usually experience heavy rainfall when rain comes. And of course, during the bigger part of the year, we have high temperatures. We have food scarcity as we speak now. Many communities are on supplementary feeding. In fact, children and women are highly affected. We have increased lake levels like in Turkana and other lakes. We have poor nutrition, and this has increased integrated health outreaches supported by international NGOs, local NGOs, county government, and the national government. Like in Kenya, we have 71% of our population living in rural, more than 38.9% global. And we have seen an increase, consistent increase in rural population from the 6 million in 2018 to 38 million in 2022 in Kenya. And we are now seeing that many people are becoming vulnerable, are more affected because there is a lot of increase from the urban to rural. Probably the life in cities has become very expensive and not easy to cope with. We need to have communities understand the climate change, and all discussions pertaining this change and what is happening should be community driven. Communities must be involved so that they also feel and become part of the round table, become part of the discussions, so that we don't just create solutions for people who are not involved. And that is why we want to champion for locally led climate solutions. And the most important thing is that communities must be adaptive. And if we cannot cope or if we cannot adapt to this, probably our communities will get overstretched and probably we will lose many of them. We are going to experience the changes in vulnerability as we focus on socio-economic dynamics of communities affected or to be affected in future by climate change. And this will be a different context completely. Climate change is not just a spontaneous thing. It is not something we are even planning for ourselves. We are planning for climate change now and in future, and probably since the future is not clear, we might even be planning for the generation to come. We have setbacks that make our communities not to adapt to climate change. And this will include remoteness or limited access to very many things, services, products, commodities. These communities are isolated. There is no economic diversification whatsoever in these communities. Let's take an example of Turkana. We have communities that majorly depend on livestock. And an alternative to them is burning charcoal, selling firewood. You see, these are communities that are not diversified. And when the climate change attacks, they become so much vulnerable because they have no alternative to depend on. And therefore, we should build resilience within what they depend on. We have more elderly people in these rural communities, and they are more vulnerable. Stressed population. We have high poverty rates. We need to ensure that we see ways of these communities adapting. We need to make sure we involve them. We need to ask them, what do you feel you can do by yourself to cope with the climate change? Then they can generate local-led solutions. One of the solutions could be in Kenya is to have county rural communities climate change ambassadors. In all the rural communities, because now we know we have 71% of our population in rural. So which means we really have to have a focus. We need to have people championing for these solutions, to task them to take lead. And we can call these people rural communities climate change ambassadors. The president of Kenya came up with a very noble idea, an idea of having 15 billion trees in Kenya. Have we started this? We need to have ambassadors for this. We have to increase afforestation. We have cut a lot of trees, and therefore we need to plant more trees. And this agenda of 15 billion trees is a noble, noble idea. And we need now to task people as soon as now to start planting trees and to make it a priority. We have climate smart agriculture. That is also another way. But the biggest challenge for this climate smart agriculture is water availability. These communities are already water stressed. Having water for the smart agriculture, which is an integrated approach for farming, crop production, livestock, integrate to cope with climate change in these times of little water. So if we focus on drilling, on making sure we have water plants so that when the rains come, when the floods come, we catch that little water, store that water so that people can focus on alternative livelihoods. And these alternative livelihoods will be, kind of solution that is locally generated. We understand that we have drought, high peak, and when flood come, they come at high peak. We are vulnerable on both. On drought, we are on extremes. We are attacked on both sides. Therefore, we need to form another locally led solution that's no regret approach, so that we minimize negativity coming as a result of climate change, and we increase or we maximize positivity. In climate change, what are some of the things we need to focus on to achieve our living? For example, we have El Nino, and we are projecting that there will be a lot of flood. Now, what can we do to ensure that we benefit from that. Let's prepare our land. Let's put a lot of land. We have a lot of land in rural communities unused. Can we put this under very easy growing crops like sorghum, so that when the rains come, we put a lot of effort on producing fast growing crops like sorghum. Let's have agri-nutrition farms ready so that when we have the El Ninos, we have a lot of vegetables for our community. We need to ensure that we do a lot of catchments for the floods. We don't just focus on like the displacement. There will be a lot of destruction. Livestock will die. It's fine. We focus on that, but also let's focus on the positivity. What are we achieving from this, so that we start planning ourselves? This climate change is changing, and we need also to change. We need to plan ourselves. We plan ourselves in a way that we achieve inside or within this period of climate change. We don't just lose hope and die. I know the future is not bright for many people, but we need to focus ourselves. We need to ensure that we become part of what is happening. We don't leave this to other people to plan. Let's all be together. And we need to ensure that when we are doing vulnerability assessment, that needs to be practical. We have many organizations that have supported communities to come up with the participatory disaster risk analysis. And this is one of the solutions to climate change. Therefore, when we're doing vulnerability assessment, we need to do a very practical one. You don't just think of vulnerability, you need to think about how are you vulnerable, so that we match solutions to your vulnerability. You don't just say vulnerable and then you imagine about vulnerability. You don't imagine about vulnerability when you're already the subject. You know where you are becoming vulnerable on, and therefore it becomes important for you to be practical. Mention. Can you see where the points where you are very vulnerable, so that we ensure that we have serious interventions towards that vulnerability. The adaptation strategy should be mainstreamed in all the interventions we are doing. We need to ensure that communities are adaptive. You sit with the communities, generate solutions, but again, communities should be adaptive to climate change. That strategy should be there. And of course, the last thing that I'll mention is that we need to also increase the use of alternative cooking methods. Gas. You need the president probably to reduce the price of gas, so that even local rural communities can have gas, at a cheaper prices, so that they cannot continue burning charcoal, selling firewood, cutting trees. That is the way we need to be together. We need to have champions. We need to have rural community climate change ambassadors. For us to achieve this, we need very serious people focused on climate change. Thank you.